Hello, this is Randy with Excel for Freelancers, and welcome to the Accounts Payable Manager. In this week, I'm going to show you how to create this incredible Accounts Payable Manager, complete with hover menu, bills and payments, where you can create unlimited bills and payments that track, along with a fantastic bill schedule in which you can display the bills by bill date, due date, or pay date on just a change. It's going to be an incredible training. I've got so much to share with you. So let's get started. All right, thanks so much for joining us. I've got a really packed training for you this week. Bills and payments, along with the Accounts Payable Manager, tracking all of the bills for any type of company or personal use. We're going to be able to track it all, add receipts, of course, a full-on dashboard, which you just saw, scheduling so we can see those bills on the schedule, a very, very cool hover menu, vendors, a complete customizable admin screen, and a whole lot more. You will not want to miss this training. I've got so much to share with you this week. I hope you do appreciate that. Of course, I do create these trainings each and every Tuesday. This template is absolutely free. All you need to do is click on the links down below, and either with your Facebook Messenger or along with email, we will get that sent over right away to you. However, if you do like to support us, there's some incredible ways to do that. In fact, if you like accounting and you want to ever create your own entire accounting application and also learn how you can create these applications to create your own financial independence with recurring income, I show you how to do that in my mentorship course, the full-on mentorship course. It is a 12-phase program where I'm going to show you every part of defining, designing, developing, and deploying your own Excel-based applications for passive income. So I hope you'll join us in the mentorship program. I'll include the links down below. We've got some really cool promotions going on with that. All right, let's get started right on this training because I've got a ton to show you. Don't forget to smash that like button, subscribe, and click the notification icon bell. I'll make sure that this training gets ranked high up, and I appreciate that. Also, don't forget to comment. I reply to each and every comment. Okay, so what do we have here? Well, I've got this really cool hover menu, right? How do we display hover? It's one of those few things in Excel that allow us to hover over the bill and have something happen on hover. So I'm going to show you how to do that. We can create this hover menu and bills and payments, right? When we add in bills and payments, we've got a specific vendor. We may want to search for individual bills. We can search by vendor, bill ID, status, reference. So if we want to search for a status and we want to search only closed, we can do that and just click and it'll show you the 3 closed jobs. We can clear it out. So we'll be able to select and load a specific bill. We're also going to be able to display the receipt here. If we see, we can have different receipts displayed very, very easily, saving and adding new bills, printing them, deleting them. We'll be able to save and update the vendor on that. We'll attach different bills or we can clear a bill out. Okay, so we've got that. That's going to be able to add unlimited bills. So very, very cool. We'll be able to add a status to each individual bill, a reference, how much the bill amount, if it was paid or not. So if we decide we were going to mark it paid, we just mark it paid. Let's go, or unpaid, partially paid, might be partially paid, or notice how the status changed to partially paid, or when it's completely paid, we can also show that, right? Completely paid will now do. When we save that, that's going to become fully paid now automatically. So it's going to reflect on the schedule. On that schedule, we want to do some additional settings. So we want to have some customizations, right? We want to have certain icons appear for on our schedule, and we want to have certain colors. We also want to set some payment terms, maybe certain vendors on our bills and payments. Maybe we want to have a due net 30, so we want that due date automatically changed. We're going to have a pay date. We can set up a pay date, what date we've paid it, and a payment type. So we've got a lot of different views on that, a lot of different updates. Simply saving the bill is going to update that inside the database, right? So we're going to be able to do that inside the admin screen. We're going to have a set scheduling weekday, and we're going to be able to also set some dynamic payment types. We're going to have attachments, right? We know that inside the bills, we may want to attach a screenshot of the attachment, right? So you'll see some of these have attachments like this. So if we want to attach a bill, all we need to do is just select this and attach any type of bill. So that's cool. We have to set a folder for that. So we're going to set a default folder here, and we have an icon folder because on our scheduling screen right here, we've got icons. These icons denote whether they've been paid or whether they're open or whether they're closed, right? So we can have different colors and different icons. If we have bill date, we can set the display. So I want to know all the bills. When was the bill date? Or maybe I want to show when their due date. That might be kind of important. When are they due? I've got some due dates, so we're going to have that. I've also got a basic list of vendors, which we can show and update. And of course, the admin screen. So this is a 5-part schedule along with a hover menu. So we've got a lot to cover in this training, right? We're going to start off, and of course, completed by a dashboard where we're going to show you some timelines. We're going to show you some, of course, slicers, and we've got a whole lot more to show you in that. So there's some really, really cool effects that we have on our dashboard. So it's a packed training. If I move too fast, I'll try to keep it slow. You can also slow down this recording of the video. You can slow down the playing of it as I record it in a certain speed, but YouTube allows that, and most other players allow you to slow down the speed if I tend to move a little quickly, because we do have a lot to cover. So grab your drink of beverage and we'll get started right away. The first thing is this very, very cool hover menu, and I have the same one on each screen. So if we go to the bills and payments, you see that we have a very cool hover menu. So as I bring my cursor over here, that we see the hover right here, and we can hover over it. So how do we do that? Well, the best way to do that, these are individual shapes, right? So when I click a shape, there's no way to create some kind of a macro on hover. However, we do have some types of shapes inside our developer. If we look in the developer, right, and you see insert, we have some active X controls. Now, these generally don't work on all Macs, but they do on PCs. So an active X control allows us for us to program something to happen when we have a hover over one of these shapes. So if I were to place these shapes over these other icons, we could actually make something to happen. So what I mean by that, so let's just take a look at this label, right? If I create a label here, we got a label here, we can assign something to happen when the user hovers over that. Now, nothing's going to happen. Let's go ahead and pin this down here so we can see nothing's going to happen if we're in design mode, okay? Keep that in mind. Now that we're in design mode, when I hover over any of these, nothing's going to happen, okay? Keep that in mind. As soon as I exit out of design mode, everything becomes live, okay? So while we're in design mode, it is what we want to do. So what I want to do is basically create a macro. I want something to happen when I hover over this, okay? So if we double click on here, it's going to take us into VBA, under the bills and payments right here. And we also see that we have label 1, which is the one I just created, and we have the action click. Well, when we click it, we can have something to happen. But in this case, I really want to focus on when we move our mouse over the shape, and that's called mouse move. So it is this here, we can clear that out now. It is this here that something's going to happen. So if I do message box and then test, as soon as I exit out of the design mode, it's going to become active. So nothing's going to happen as I hover over it. As soon as I exit out of design mode, you're going to see, as soon as I hover over it, we're going to get that message box test. Okay, so keep that in mind. So we can perform any action. And so what we want to do is, but we really don't want to look. We really don't want this to look like this. So what we can do is go into the properties here, and we can then clear it out. Let's bring in the properties over so you can see them, and I'll bring them down a little bit here so you can see them. Okay, so we've got some properties, but what we don't want to do is we don't want the user to see that. It's not very pleasant. So all we need to do is just make it transparent. So if we have a border style, we've got none, which is what we want. And we have the back style. If we click here and we go transparent, we're not going to see that. And we remove the label. We have to give it a name. That's critical. But we don't have to give it a caption. If I clear out this caption here, then we have basically an invisible box, right? So again, same thing, getting out of design mode. As soon as I hover over that, we're going to get this test here. All right, great. So we see how we can perform actions on that. Now, what if I were to create different ones, some of them that when we hover over and some of them make them disappear? And so what do I mean by that? If I close that here, let's close out of this one and go back into design mode here, and we'll keep the properties open. And now what you'll see if I click on here, we see we've got some bars here, 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 and here, and here. So I've got 5 different horizontal. These are all, of course, text boxes. These are all, as we saw here in these insert right here, we saw we've got different, I've got all the label, they're ActiveX label controls, ActiveX label controls. There's no border, and there's no filled, right? But so they're completely invisible. However, when we hovered over them, we want something to happen. So if I double click this here, or any one of these, let's go ahead and show that, double clicking it. And what that's going to do is going to see hide menu. So I've got hide menu 1, 2, 1 through 5. For each one of those horizontal bars, I've got a 5. Okay, so what that's going to do is run a macro called menu hide. And that macro is basically going to hide all of our shapes. So let's take a look at some of the shapes. We're going to go out of design mode. And what we're going to do is we see we got a shape here. This is called menu 1. And if we hover over this one, this is called menu 2. So you get the idea of what they're all, there's 5 different menus and they all have the same, and then this last one's called menu 5. So what I want to do is when somebody hovers over one of these bars here, these invisible bars, you can see it there if I click on it. When somebody hovers over that, I want to hide all the menus. However, that's great, but how do I get them to show up? Well, I've got some other ActiveX controls. And there, if I click on the design mode here, I will be able to zoom in, and let's go ahead and select one, right? They're a little bit hard to find, but if you ever want to know how to find them, these are the icon shapes, right? So that's the icon, that's not it, but they're hidden, right? But how can you find them? Well, all we need to do is go into the selection here and look them up. So we're going to use our selection tool. We can close out the properties now, and we see we have one that's called hover 5, hover 1, hover 3, 2, and 1. Okay, so that's how we're going to get them. Notice we can't select them, but as soon as we go into design mode, keep in mind, design mode is how everything happens. So now when we select hover 1, here it is. Here is our hover. This is our ActiveX control. So it's right here under hover 1. So here it is right here. This is our label shape. So that's it. We can move it anywhere we want. And so here it is. This is the shape. What's this called? This is called hover 1. And we have hover 2, which is there. So basically, this is a label without the border, without filling. And then there's a macro that's assigned to the hover of that. So when we go back into the sheet, bills and payments here, we see we have now these shapes here, all the way down here called hover 3, hover 4, hover 5, hover 2, and hover 1. So it's these specific shapes. And now for each one of these, I'm going to do something. For example, on hover 1, what is hover 1? Hover 1 is right here. If I select it, we can see, keep in mind that you cannot select it unless we're out of design mode. As soon as I exit out of design mode, that selection goes away. Design mode is critical for us. So this is called hover 1. I want something to happen when we hover over that. What do I want to happen? Well, I want to take this shape and I want to display it. Let's go ahead and I want to take this shape and I want to display it, menu 1. So that's just what we're going to do inside here. So as soon as we, on hover 1, as soon as we mouse move over it, we want something to happen. And what that is basically we're going to focus on that menu 1 shape. And I want to change the menu width. I want to give it a little bit of a slide out look. It's very fast. I almost can't see it. For the menu width, we're going to start it off at 33, which is just like a square, basically. And we're going to go to 133. And we're going to step 0.5, right? So we can step it up. And then what we're going to do is we're going to adjust the width of that. Width is going to grow until it becomes full. And that's just what we happen as we go over it. So when I slide over here, you can see it goes. But when I slide back, right, it disappears. Why is it disappearing? Because we're sliding over this bar. So the first thing we do is hide it. So that's it. That's all we have to do. And the slide out is very quick. You might want to make it a little bit slower. You can adjust this step up if you want, or you can slow it down a little bit, but I'll keep it fast. I kind of wanted it fast. Okay, so that's how we do it. So we hover over 1 to show it, and then over this bar where it's going to hide them all. Then again, the same thing here. Here, showing it, bar doing it. So this, of course, is called hover 2. The same thing here. Go back into the design mode, clicking on hover 2. We could see that hover 2, and hover 2 is the same, except this time we are focusing on menu item number 2, and we're increasing the width. So that is all we have to do. Then all I did was duplicate this code here, this code all the way from the hovers and the menus, everything like here, all the way from, so we have 5 for the menus, and we have 5 different ones for the basically hiding the menus. Then all we have to do is simply copy and paste that on each of the sheets that we want to. So we have 6 different sheets. We've got the admin, we've got the bills, we have the dashboard, we have the schedule, and then that's it. So we have that. So that's all we need to do. 5 sheets actually. So that's all we need to do to create this very, very cool hover effect. Keep in mind that we're using, of course, labels, ActiveX labels. Other shapes, a button would work. A few others ones would work, but we're going to use labels because the other ones have hover effects too. But labels is the easiest one. So that's what we're going to do. That allows us to run a macro on hover. Keep in mind that if something doesn't work, it's probably because you're inside or outside of design mode, right? If you can't select something, it's because you're not not in design mode. If it's not working, if the hover's not working, it's because you are in design mode. So keep that in mind. This can be a little bit confusing, so keep that in mind. All right, so all I did was just basically duplicate that on every single shape. And then what I did is I also assigned a macro to the button, right? I assigned a macro here. So that macro is also, if we select on this and we click assign macro, we see that we have something called menu icon go to sheet. So I have a specific macro that will allow us to go to the sheet. Now we notice that the name of this is called dashboard. We notice that the name of this is called bills and payments. The name of this is called bill schedule, right? So if we assign a specific name and that name is exactly the same name as these sheet names down here, right, bill schedule, then all we need to do is just run a little bit of a macro that allows us to select any shape and go to the page based on the name of the button, right? It goes to that page. All right, great. So how do we do that? Well, of course, that's with a macro. If we right click, okay, and click assign macro, we see that it's called menu go to sheet. Okay, when we edit that, it's going to take us to a module called application macros. Application macros. Very, very simple. Some things. First of all, we have menu hide. This is the macro that we saw recently. Remember when we looked in here and we saw hide menus, remember those horizontal bars? That's called menu hide. So how do we get them to hide? Well, back inside the module here, it's very easy. We're going to set the menu number as long, and we're going to run the menu number from 1 through 5 because we have 5 different menus. And if you remember those menu shapes there, they're named very specific. Menu 1, menu 2, menu 3, menu 4, and menu 5. Okay, so if we've named them all consistently like that, we can do that with just a loop. Just in case there's an error, we've wrapped it in on error resume next and on error go to 0. And basically we're going to say to use the active sheet because we want this action to perform regardless of the sheet. We've got 5 different sheets that we're going to be putting it on, so we want to make sure it runs on any sheet that it has. So shapes menu and the menu number 1 through 5. The width goes back to 33. Basically, we could hide it or unhide it, but all we're doing is setting the width back to 33. And what that's going to do is it's going to basically hide it under this bar. So it's going to be hidden under this. So if we move it over, we see that they're all there, but hidden, right? So if we run that macro, they all get reduced. You see they're all under there, but they're just simply under that bar. And they're hidden there. So as soon as we highlight over them, they are sliding out very, very quickly, very, very easily like that. Okay, so it is that macro that gets tied to these hide shapes, and we're going to just simply run this loop and then hide all the shapes accordingly, but it's actually just getting reduced in width, and then they're simply hidden behind that bar. Okay, great. Then you saw another macro where we're automatically, when we actually select on one of those shapes, those icons, that we're actually going to, there's that test again, we can remove that, going back into design mode, right? We want to find it, so we're going to select all the area, and we want to know where it is. So if you don't know where it is, just use this, or of course we can use the last one, label 1 is going to be up here if we can't find it. Label 1, make sure you're in design mode, selecting on label 1, that's going to select it right there, and then we find it, and then all we just need to do is just delete, and it's going to be gone. That was the test one. So when we assign particular macros to buttons and we name them very specifically, we can then automatically go to that sheet with a macro. So it is that macro that we're going to go to now. So we can see here the macro, of course, is called go to sheet. When we edit that, it's going to take us right back to the application macro. This one here, menu go to sheet, right? That's the one. The first thing what I want to do is I want to run the macro, the one above, that we're going to hide all the menus. The next step, we're going to take the application call it. This is the name of the button that called it. And the name of the button is exactly that. So sheets, application caller, activate. That's all we need to do. Calling out that sheet, it's going to activate that. Very, very simple. So all we need to do is click on the individual icons, and it's going to go directly to whatever sheet's the name of it. Just make sure that we have the name of our shape, the name of those icons is exactly the name of the sheet, whether it's dashboard or whether it's bill schedule, exactly as it. And that's it. That's how we recreate a really, really cool, very, very simple hover menu. We just need to hover over it, and as we move down, they all get hidden or shown, or hidden and shown just like that. And clicking on them is going to allow us to go to that individual sheet. All right, great. I'm glad I got to show that part to you. It's really, really important because we've got a lot to cover. Next up, what I want to do is I want to focus on this area. This is the bills and payments, right? Let's reduce that. We don't need it back to 100%. And we want to be able to create unlimited bills and then also show them as paid or mark them as paid as they come up. And of course, be able to attach a document for that. So when we assign particular macros to buttons and we name them them very specifically, we can then automatically go to that sheet with a macro. So it is that macro that we're going to go to now. So we can see here the macro, of course, is called go to sheet. When we edit that, it's going to take us right back to the application macros. This one here, menu go to sheet, right? That's the one. The first thing what I want to do is I want to run the macro, the one above, that we're going to hide all the menus. The next step, we're going to take the application caller. This is the name of the button that called it. And the name of the button is exactly that. So sheets, application caller, activate. That's all we need to do. Calling out that sheet, it's going to activate that. Very, very simple. So all we need to do is click on the individual icons, and it's going to go directly to whatever sheet's the name of it. Just make sure that we have the name of our shape. The name of those icons is exactly the name of the sheet, whether it's dashboard or whether it's bill schedule, exactly as it. And that's it. That's how we recreate a really, really cool, very, very simple hover menu. We just need to hover over it. And as we move down, they all get hidden or shown or hidden and shown just like that. And clicking on them is going to allow us to go to that individual sheet. All right, great. I'm glad I got to show that part to you. It's really, really important because we've got a lot to cover. Next up, what I want to do is I want to focus on this area. This is the bills and payments, right? Let's reduce that. We don't need it back to 100%. And we want to be able to create unlimited bills and then also show them as paid or mark them as paid as they come up. And of course, be able to attach receipts or bills just with a click. We can also attach bills. So we're going to go over to that now. How do we get that in there? How do we create it? How do we create this really cool filter? And how do we get them to display? All right, so that's what we're going to get to. Well, of course, everything you see here is stored inside our bills database, which is located right here. And it's basically a table. We've got the ID, the vendor, bill date, status, receipt name, all the fields associated with that, including the paid amount, payment type notes, and a formula associated with the amount due. And the amount due is simply the bill amount minus the amount paid. So that's where everything's going to be stored. And we have a unique bill ID. So back inside the bill payment screen, we've got some hidden columns, as you may have seen. I want to know if we're going to include the paid or column. This particular true or false is going to be helpful for when we want to search bills, right? When we include, we can include or exclude paid and closed. So if we decide we're going to exclude paid and closed, we're only going to show the open bills here. Otherwise, we can select on this and it's going to show all the bills. So that's the true or false option, and that's going to be located in B2. I want to know the selected bill ID. That's going to be based on the selected. If I select a different bill, I want that bill ID to change. I also want to know the row that's associated with that bill. That is the database row that is associated with that. And it's located here. So that means that bill ID number 3 is located in row number 6, as you can see right here. And in order to get that, we need to create some named ranges, some dynamic named ranges that will grow as our data grows. So if we look in the formulas and name manager, and we see that we have bill ID, we're going to use the offset formula starting in the header A3, and then offsetting one row below because we don't want to include the header. We're going to count all the values from 3 all the way to the last possible row. We're going to subtract 1 because we don't want to include the header row. That's going to create a dynamic named range, and we're including the header row because we don't want any errors in case there is no data. So including the header row is important for that case. So along with that, we also have a few others while we're here. We have bill amount due. I've got a named range for the amount due. I've got bill it's going to encompass the entire data. That bill due date, we're not going to use the date in this training. So we're going to use the bill due date. I want to know one for the due dates. I also want to know one for the vendor name. Okay. And also, I think that's it for the bill. So as far as for the bill in this table, that's it. That's all we're going to be focusing on here. So if I want to extract that row, I can use the match. So back into that, I want to extract that row. I want to know that is on row 6. To do that, we're going to use the match formula. We're going to match whatever's based in B3, which is the ID. We're going to run a match based on the named range bill ID. We're going to add 3 because we want the actual row number. Our first result, row 1, is going to be on row 4. So we want to make sure to add 3, meaning our first one is on row 4. Bill ID 1 is on row 4. I don't want to return 1. I want to return the row number. So we're adding 3. If you've been with me for a while, you know this. The next bill ID, I also want to know the next available one. We're going to use the max formula based on all the bill IDs. As long as our bill IDs are numerical, we can extract the max, and then basically I want to add 1 to that. That is going to let us know our next available ID. If there's no data at all, then could create an error, and therefore we want to set the default to sit bill ID number 1, and we can use that on if error. So that's why if there's an error, that means there's no data, and therefore we're going to set it to 1. I also want to know the selected bill row. We've got some conditional formatting here, and I want to make sure that that format shows. So the selected row 10 or 9, I want that displayed right here, located in B6. If we highlight these and we go into the home and then we go into the conditional formatting, we're going to find that we have 3 different conditional formattings. The first is based on that selected row, where we're going to get it that dark green, white font and bold. Then we're going to color some rows based on making sure that there's a value in E7, and then we're going to give it that white color for even rows. And for odd rows, we're going to give it that color green. That's how we're going to get this alternating row look, this professional look. Great. So next up, I want to know if it's going to be loading or not, right? When we load it, that's going to go to true and back to false. I also want to know the vendor row. What is the vendor row? Well, we have a list of vendors here. I want to know the row that's associated, 4, 5, or 6, right? So to do that, of course, we need the named range. So we look in the formulas back in here, and now we have something called vendor ID and vendor name, right? So if I'm going to be looking based on a vendor name, we have the named range based on that vendor name, and we have one for vendor ID because, for example, I want to make sure that we're using a vendor that's on our list. So if I create a new bill and I select a vendor from our drop-down list of vendor names that you saw, this is a data validation based on our vendor name. So we look under data and we see that that's based on the vendor names, that named range we just saw. So what I want to do is I want to know what row. I want to make sure it's a correct vendor. So to do that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to run a match based on the vendor row. That vendor row is based on a match. This is our next vendor ID. We'll get to that next. I want to know the row that is associated with that vendor. We're running a match based on what is in J4, and I want to know the vendor name, right? So vendor name. So that's all we have to do based on the say. We can change the name the row wants in, because this is where we're changing the name in J5. However, we're simply going to look up the one in J4. We're going to add 3, of course, because our vendors also start on row 4. And that is it. That's all we have to do to make sure that here's our vendor row starting on row 4, okay? I think we need a name and title here, don't we? Yes, we do. Let's go ahead and copy this group here. This is our name. And I'm going to put that over into the vendor list. So at least we have something. There we go. We know what we're dealing with. All right. So we've got a list of vendors here, and we know we can extract a row directly from here to make sure that we have a correct vendor. And I also want to know the next vendor ID. If we want to add a new vendor ID, we want to be able to do that. So we new bill, and we can add a new vendor just simply by saving this vendor, saving it. So if I want to add in Frida, Fred's wife, Frida Fredders, and then I want to give an address 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's a long address, Main Street. I want to be able to save this vendor, right? So all I need to do is just click Save Vendor, and we know the next vendor ID. That we've got a fade out that's going to say vendor saved, so we know it's been saved. And then we'll see back in the vendor list that that's now been saved. We now have Frida Fredders here. Okay, great. So we're saving the vendors. So we can save the vendors. We can also save new bills. We can create brand new bills. We can re-enter different vendors, and we can also enter a bill date. We've got a pop-up calendar, shape-based pop-up calendar. We can set the terms based on the bill date, which is going to automate the due date. We can set the pay date if we want. We can set the payment type if we make a payment type, a reference number if we like. We can add a bill amount, how much is the amount, that's important. And then also the paid amount, and then we can, of course, as mentioned, we can attach a receipt if we want. Okay, great, and adding some notes. So all we need to do then is just add some notes, save that bill. It's going to save that bill. It's going to automatically add that bill to the list, and we can display that. Okay, great. So how do we do all of that? Well, that's going to come in a module. So let's go over the module. That's the one we're going to be focused on, is the bill macros module. So that's the one we want to focus on. And of course, we've got some variables here. We'll be going over those as we go. The first one I want to show you is this list load. Remember, we had some filters here, and we'll be able to load that list dynamically. We're able to search on status, right? So if we want to search for status, or maybe we want to search for a specific vendor. Maybe we only want to show Lisa here, so we only want to show Lisa Perkins, and clearing that out. Or maybe we want to search by notes, right? If we want to search only by notes, I want to search anywhere by notes. It's going to show only those, of course, bills that have tests in the notes. So we have a dynamic search filter, and we're able to clear the filter, along with, of course, adding only those bills without that. So we've got a lot of different filters here, so we can do a whole lot with that. All right, so how are we going to perform this? Well, first of all, this is, of course, based on an advanced filter. We want to filter these records dynamically. We also want to have that criteria, what are we searching by, bill ID, vendor status, or reference, or any of those. So how are we going to do that? Well, the best way to do that, of course, like I mentioned, is with advanced filter, and it's going to be based on our original database located in the bills database here. And we're going to set some criteria. Now we have more than one criteria possibly. Why is that? Because we're going to be filtering based on certain status. If we uncheck this, we are going to exclude anything that's paid, and we're going to exclude anything that's closed. And that's going to be based on our admin screen. So if we look on our admin screen, we're going to be excluding anything that's either here, paid in full, right? Fully paid or closed. So those are the ones we want to exclude there. So how are we going to do that? Well, that's going to be in our bills database. So here's our criteria right here. We have a vendor, of course, it's not empty, but maybe we want to search for a specific vendor. So back into the bills and payment. If I want to search for only Nancy, right, and I only want to include, so that's going to be only Nancy and only those that are not paid and not closed. So that's going to be set some criteria. So let's take a look inside of database. Now we have some criteria here. We have a vendor, and it's Nancy Smith, both the same, and we have does not equal fully paid and does not equal closed. So that is our criteria that we are setting up this time, and it is that criteria, and we can link that. So all we need to do is simply link it with the original data. However, we notice that also our criteria type is also dynamic. This is linked to bills and payments F4, meaning it's dynamic. Sometimes we're searching for ID, maybe we're searching for notes, so on and so forth. So when we link this cell to F4, whatever we put in F4 is automatically going to be set. So back into the bills and payments. If I clear it, right, and I show, let's say, bill ID or anything like that, and I show paid and closed, here now we're going to be searching for a different bill ID. So if I'm going to search only for a bill ID, let's say bill number 1, I only want to locate that bill based on the ID, and we're going to include any paid or any closed or any status. So now we take a look. Now it says bill ID. Now we're only for showing, and of course status does not equal empty. That's it. Okay, so this is dynamic. Our criteria header is dynamic based on whatever the user enters. We're going to put the same value in here as long as it doesn't equal enter search. Why is that important? Because when I clear this, the default text is called enter search right here. I want to make sure that I exclude anything that says enter search because I don't want that part. That's default and for the user's purposes, and we don't want to be searching based on that. So we want to make sure inside this, if the F5 equals enter search, then just put in nothing. Otherwise, bill and payments, we're going to show what's in there. And we're going to do that the same exact formula for both of these. This, however, is a little bit different. This status is, if the user has selected, this is going to be based on our option. This option right here, include paid or closed. Remember, when that is checked, this is true. When it is unchecked, this is false. So we want to create a formula based on that true or false. And to do that, the best way to do that is just create an if then. So back in the bit, if bills and payments equals true, which it does, then what we want to do is put does not equal. Otherwise, if it's false, meaning we want to exclude, then we're going to say does not equal and whatever's in the admin C13, which is fully paid. And the same thing for the one lower than that, except this time we're going to add in admin and settings C14, which is the closed status. So that means we want to show all of our, let's say bills, this should say job bills, not just a conversion, bills, okay, bills database. So we want to show all of our bills except for those that have been fully paid and except for those that are closed. So we want to show that. And what that's going to do is get us those results. Those results are going to come here, and then we're simply going to bring all those results, including the bill ID, and we're going to bring them directly inside the bill and payments. And you say, well, all those results, well, I don't see the bill ID. The bill ID is actually right here. If we see this, 1, 2, 3, look in the function bar here, you see that, right? So how do we do that? Well, what I did is simply format. There's two ways to format that. We can, of course, color the cell. If I drop this down here, and we show that we can also give it a font color, or we can give it a custom font. So we've done that right here. So if I were to change the font color to red, you would see that it would show up. But if I give it the same font color as the background here, it's going to be hidden. Another way to do that, is going to be using our general here, our custom number formats, is to use custom here, and then we can use 3 different semicolons, 1, 2, 3. That also will make it disappear. So we have 2 different choices which we can use. All right, great. So, but I really want that ID. I want that because I want to make sure that we're going to take whatever's ID is in here inside column D in the selected row when I load it, and I want to put that ID, in this case 2, I want to put it directly inside B3. So that's going to do it. So I want to bring in bill numbers, the due date, the vendor, and the amount due. So that's where our results are going to come directly in here. Bill ID, due date, vendor, and amount due, and bringing them all into here. And we can do that with the macro, of course. So it is that macro that is tied to a few different things. That macro is tied to 2 different things. So if we take a look inside the bills and payments, the macro is tied to this button here. So when we assign the macro, we see it as that same macro, that bills load list. That macro is also tied to a change event here, F5. And that means when I enter something, like 1 or 2, I want that to load in. I want to run that macro. So it's also tied to F5. So if we take a look inside here, our bills here, bills and payments here, and we look up here on worksheet change, we're focused on worksheet change. When we make a change to F5, then we're going to run the macro bills load list. That's the macro that we're going to go over right now because it's the first macro inside this module. First thing what I want to do is I want to clear any selected row. And that selected row is going to be located. Notice that we have conditional formatting based on that. And then that's going to be right here inside B6. So B6 is going to load. So I want to clear that out. When I clear it, I want to clear it out. And I also want to clear out any of the data all the way from D all the way through G. So D through G is going to do that. So, excuse me, let's make that D through G. Yeah, I like that better. D through G because I want to clear out those numbers. All the way clearing those contents out. I want to get the last row of the original data. And that data, of course, based on Bill's database. We're going to run an advanced filter based on that last row. If, of course, it's less than 3, we're going to exit the sub, right? It should be less than 4, right? Because our headers are on, of course, row 3. All right, so what I want to do is run an advanced filter. Now, that advanced filter is going to be based on the original data from columns A3 all the way to N. So it's all the way to N based on the row, the header row 3. That criteria is going to be P2 through Q4, and the results are going to come directly into from R to U. So that's just what we have here. P2 through Q, that's where our criteria range, and we're going to copy it to R through U. Then what I want to do is I want to determine the last row based on column R. So this last row is, of course, 22. So I want to extract that, and we're going to do that inside this variable, the last row, based on column R, and we're going to get the last row. If it's less than 3, we can exit the sub out. However, then if it's not, we're going to simply bring it over in a value to value change. So we're taking all the values from RU3 through the RU last row and just bringing it over into column D through G. That's going to bring everything over. Great. So also we notice we have the clear filter. Now remember, when we clear the filter, all we need to do is make a change to F5. That's going to trigger it. If that changes, of course, enter search, what's that going to do? That is automatically going to clear out our criteria. Why is that? Because inside our bills database, notice here, if it's enter search, we're just going to put does not equal. If it's enter search, does not equal. So all we need to do is simply take the enter search when I clear the filter. Let's do that. Let's add something in here so we can put something different than when I clear the filter. All I need to do is put enter search here. It's going to automatically rerun that advanced filter. And of course, there's going to be no criteria, and therefore all the results are going to show up. Okay, great. So we've got that. And that's all clear filter is a single line of code. It is that macro that's assigned to the button. How about if I want to save and update the bill, right? It is the same macro where we're going to be both saving and updating the bill. And within that save macro, certainly I want to make sure that we have all the required fields. I need to make sure that we actually have a vendor. I need to make sure we have a bill date. I want to make sure there's a status. Of course, we need to have a bill amount and due date. Those are all critical. So the first thing we're going to do is check on those required fields. And so the best way to do that, I want to make sure that we actually have a vendor, right? A vendor is located in J5. If there's nothing there, if it's empty, we need to let the user know to add a vendor before saving the bill. I also want to make sure that there's required fields. Now there's multiple required fields, as I just mentioned, bill date, status, and a few other things. So we can check each one, but another way to do that is simply count the number of cells that are required and to make sure. So the required fields, I have 4 required fields. So we can use the formula count A, J10, J12, L12, and L11. So that's bill date, the status, we have the due date, and we have the bill amount. Those 4 are required. So that means when we use count A, if this is anything other than 4, for example, if we decide we're going to delete the status, right, and I try to save this, we see that this is now, let's go ahead and delete that here. If I delete that, we see that the required fields are now 3. If I try to save that bill, it's going to let us know, please make sure to add in bill date, due date, status, and bill amount before saving. One of those is blank, so that's going to be a problem, right? So to do that, we want to make sure that if this number is anything other than 4 and less than 4, then we need to let the user know that they have not filled in the required fields. So it's a little bit easier to code for that. So here we do. If B11 is less than 4, then let them know with the message box and exit the sub out. I also want to make sure that they actually haven't paid more than, of course, the bill amount. If they've paid $500 and the bill amount is $450 and I try to save that bill, I want to let the user know to make sure the amount due is not less than 0, right? So we want to make sure that that doesn't happen, okay? So to do that, we just ensure we just double check that L14, which is our amount due, is not less than, of course, 0. So we just check that. If L14 is equal to 0, or I should say less than 0, right? If equal to 0, L14 is less than 0, that's what I want, less than 0. Then, so if L14 is less than 0, then please make sure the amount due is 0. Perfect. But however, what if it is 0? If it is 0, I want to make sure that this automatically gets marked as fully paid. Okay, so the best way to do that is just to check. So if L14 equals 0, then we're going to mark fully paid on 0 balance. And where is that fully paid? That fully paid is located inside our admin right here under C13. So we want to C13 is where we want to do it. So that's exactly L10 becomes C13. All right, great. So now all we need to do, we've set all that up to mark as fully paid. We could actually add a partial pay, but I left it empty for now. Okay, so what do I want to do? When we're saving those bills, we need to do, whether we're updating an existing bill or saving a new bill, I need to differentiate between those two. And we know that because a new bill is going to have an empty row. No row has been assigned to that, right? No ID has been assigned, and therefore no row is calculated. However, if it's an existing bill, we see that B4 contains a row. So B4 is going to let us know whether it's existing. So if B4 equals empty, we know it's a new bill. Else it's existing. So if it's a new bill, I want to add a new database row based on the bill's database. I also want to set the next bill ID. That next bill ID is using the max formula based on bill right here inside B5. So we're going to do that right here. And then what I want to do is I want to set that bill ID, that brand new bill ID in column A. And then also what I want to do is I want to set in, I don't often use formulas, but in this case, it was kind of important, meaning it was also a simple formula, just a subtraction. I want to set that amount due formula based on both on the bill amount and the amount paid, setting that formula in column N. We only need to set it once, and we only need to set it for, of course, new bills. So we can do that right here. Bills database, and then also we have the N in the bill row simply equal to I and the bill row minus K in the bill row. And basically that is the amount due formula, which is simply the bill amount minus the paid amount. These 4 lines of code are only for new bills. However, for existing bills, we are going to set the bill row based on B4. Then all we need to do is run data mapping. Data mapping meaning we have these particular cells up here in row 1. These cells addresses pertain to the cell addresses located in bill of payments. So we see that J5 is our vendor name. We see that J10 is our bill date. So when we look down here and we see our bill date here, let's scroll over to the left here, our bill date is located J10. Our vendor is J5. So if I map these fields, all I need to do is loop from the first column, or actually in this case the second column, because we've already set the ID, starting with the vendor name all the way to the last column, and then just add in the data. And that's what we've done here, 2 to 13, all 13 columns, right? I'm going to take whatever is in that row 1, whatever cell is in that row 1, and I want to extract whatever value that is, and I want to put it directly inside the bill row and the bill column. That's it. That's data mapping. We're going to reload the list. If we've added a new one, or maybe we've changed the name, I want to reload the list. And then what I want to do is I want to set the selected row. I want to know that selected row for the conditional formatting. And to do that, we just need to set it up. And I actually need to make change. I need to change this to D, right? Why is that? Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to look for B3. So notice it wasn't selected. So now let's go ahead and go into the bill payments here. And we're going to save that bill. And we see that we now have a selected row. We see that bill ID 2 has been selected. If we select 3, and because when we save that bill, I want to make sure that the same row is selected here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to look for that ID in column D. If the ID is found here, and then I know that to load it up. Okay, so the ID here is 5. So I'm going to look in column D here. I'm going to look to see if it's found. I'm going to find that. If it's found, then I know to simply make sure that 10 is the selected bill row and place that bill row inside B6. So how do we do that? Well, whatever's in B3, this is our bill ID. So I'm going to look for that. I'm going to look for that in column D. If it's found using the find, I want to extract that row, and I want to place that row directly inside B6. If it's not found, it could create an error, and therefore we're going to wrap it in on error resume next and on error go to 0. That's how we quickly set the highlighted row. And why is that important? Because if we change anything, it's automatically going to be selected. And then I'm just going to run that bill saved message. That is the fade out message that we use. As soon as it's saved, if we scroll over here and we look to the right a little bit, we see that we're going to have that bill saved, that basically fade out message. It's going to take that shape and slowly fade it out. It's a little bit slow, but it'll work. Okay, so that's the message right here. It's just delayed. I'll probably make that to 100. We're just going to run that delay, and then that delay is going to slowly fade out that button through this macro. Great. So now what I want to do is I want to add a picture. Remember, adding that receipt picture, that's important. Attaching the bill, and we can attach it right here. So if it's a Carl's Jr. or whatever it is, we can add that receipt here. So how are we going to do that? And we want it to display. Well, the first thing is that macro, of course, is assigned to this attached bill. So if we right-click Assign Macro, Browse, Bill, Browse Picture. When we edit that, we're going to send right back to the macro we just were. First thing what I want to do is I want to make sure that all those receipts get saved in a specific folder. That's going to help us keep us organized. And we're going to set that folder based on what's in the admin screen. So I want that folder. I'm going to set a bill attachment folder. It's going to be in something called Sample Bills in this folder here. So that is also a named range called Bill Received Folder inside our admin screen. So wherever we find them, they're going to copy those bills. I'm going to put them all directly inside this folder. And to do that, all we need to do is just copy it over. So the first thing what I want to do is make sure that we actually have a correct folder. If it's empty or the file path is not correct, then let the user know to please select a folder for all bills. And in fact, what I can do is assign a macro. So we have a macro that is here called Browse for Bill Folder Picture. So this is the macro that's going to run when we actually click this button inside the admin screen. This button here is going to browse for that folder. Okay. So it is this macro that I'm going to ask them to run so when we close this out, that they need it better. So I'm going to return. So this is the macro, run macro to browse for folder in case the folder is not existing or it's incorrect, in case that path is incorrect. Right? And then we can exit the sub. We don't need to move on. They can run this again and it'll work just fine. But if it is an accurate folder, we're going to set that into a named range, a string named range called bill folder. Try not to make sure that your named ranges here are not the same as your variable. It can sometimes create issues. That is the bill picture folder where we're going to be putting in a picture of those bills. Also, what I want to do is I want to then browse for it. Okay, so we're going to set the bill picture based on the file picker, right? File picker. And we're going to give it a title. Please select a bill or receipt picture. We're going to give it some filters, right? In this case, only JPEGs, PNG, GIFs. You can add additional for PDFs, but not in this training. But we're just going to focus on pictures. Allowing multi-select, no. If they don't pick something, we need to, if they cancel that out, we need to go to no selection, just skip everything else. If they don't cancel, what I'm going to do is I'm going to check, are they browsing in the current folder? In other words, let's say we browse in the folder that we're getting it from. What I mean by that is, let's say we're pulling it from the same folder that we want to put it into. There's no need to copy it over to this folder if that's where we're browsing it from. We don't need to move it. We don't need to copy it. We don't need to do anything. We just keep it right where it is. So what I want to check is this file path, the same place where we want to put it. So this line of code is going to do that. And that basically means if the selected, let's escape out of there, if the selected item, that means the full file path of whatever item they've selected, is exactly the same as the file path of the bill folder and the directory of the selected item, this is the name of the file, If it's exactly the same place, we don't need to move it. We don't need to copy it anywhere else. So we can simply skip the copy, go to skip copy. I'm just going to go right down here. Also what I want, okay, so let's say it's not in the folder. Let's say we want to browse for it from a different place and we do want to put it in the folder. But what if that file name already exists in the folder? In that case, what I want to do is I want to delete that file. So we can do that here. If the directory of the bill folder and the directory of the select items VB directory does not equal empty, what this means is the file already exists in the same name and the same. So I want to remove it, right? I can't replace one file to another if they have the exact same name. So we need to kill the current one, meaning delete it if it already exists. Once we do delete it, if it exists, we can then move on. Okay, so now all we're going to do is copy it from its current location into its new location. We can use file copy for that. From its current location, which is here, .selected items, into its new location, bill folder, and the directory of the selected items. That's going to copy the picture into the folder. Copy picture into the, let's call it the bill folder, right? The bill folder. And that's all we have to do. Relatively simple, bill folder. Okay, good. So once we have that, all we need to do is I want to take the file name of that and I want to put it somewhere. I want to save it, right? If we take a look at our bill payments bill database, we see that we have a reference. Let's take a look at this. This particular name of the file here, this is the name of the file, rent, whatever it is, sample bill 2, sample bill 3, whatever, we have the name of the file. I want to put it inside that database. And it's going to be located inside B10. And meaning, when we go back into the bill payments, B10 is going to take on the name of that. That's the one. So here, this Carl's Jr. receipt is located in B10. I want to place the name of that file. So that's the last thing. B10 is simply equal to the directory of the select items. So it's going to extract the name from the full file path, and it's going to place the name directly in place file name. And that way, as soon as we save it, it's automatically going to save it to the database. And then we're going to run a macro that's going to show that bitch, a separate macro that's actually going to show that bill. So that macro that is going to then display that directly in here, and it's automatically going to be centered based on both vertically and horizontally based on those cells. So we've got a macro that's going to do just that. We want to center it vertically between rows 12 and 19, and we also want to center it horizontally based on column N. So we want to put equal distance spacing both on the left and right and the top and bottom. And we want to insert it based on this. And we can do that because now we know where it's located, because we know it's located directly inside our bill received folder. And we also know the name of it because the name is located right here in B10. So when we combine the name along with the folder, we get a full file and accurate path. We can then insert it into that. And we do that with just the next macro that we're going to go over. So it is the show bill picture here. Okay, we also have the clear picture. So in clear picture, all we need to do is delete the picture. We're always going to give it the same name. And then we're going to clear the contents of B10. So that way we can quickly and easily clear the picture just by that. Great, so how are we going to do that? Well, to add it in, it's very, very simply. We're going to focus on this particular show bills picture. So first of all, we're going to delete any existing picture that might be there. We're going to delete it. If it doesn't exist, it could create an error. So we've wrapped it in on error resume next, and on error go to 0. So we're going to remove the picture of its existing. Now what we want to do is we want to check for the folder. Let's say I update that bill folder, okay, the bill picture folder. I want to check for that to make sure it is. So here, if the admin bill picture received folder equals empty, then please set a folder for the bill receipts. So great. So we have that. And now what we want to do is we're going to, of course, run that macro because it doesn't exist only if it's empty, if it's equal empty. And then what we're going to do is if it's still empty, even after they run the macro to browse for it, we're going to exit the sub. Now we can move on. We're going to set, just like we did before, we're going to set the variable. The bill folder is basically whatever's there along with the backslash. We're going to combine that to get that full file path. That folder, along with whatever's in B10, is going to get us our full file path. Once we have that full file path, we can then use it to insert it, right? So I want to make sure that it is accurate, just to double check. If the directory file path does not equal empty, then we can continue on, meaning it is an accurate path. We're going to insert that picture inside the shape using .pictures.insert and the full file path. We're going to give it a very specific name because it is this name that we're going to use to delete it, or delete it here, or delete it here. So we certainly want to give it a very specific name. Once we have it given name, we can then set it up. Okay, so set name, duplicate. So we're insert picture and set the name. Okay, so once we have that, we can then work with it. So we're going to work with it here. The first thing what I want to do is I don't want to distort that picture at all. So I'm going to lock the aspect ratio, making sure that it is MSOC true, which is going to lock the aspect ratio. Then what I want to do is I want to set the maximum width or the maximum height. And the best way to do that is to check to see is the width bigger or is the height bigger. In this case, if the width is bigger than the height, then we're going to set the maximum width of 120. Else, if the height is bigger, then we're going to set the maximum height of 110. That's going to ensure that it fits within the box. Next up, I want to position it, again, as I mentioned, horizontally. I want to position it indirectly in column N. So to do that, we're going to take the left portion of column N, that left setting, and then we're going to add something to that, right? I want to know basically if it's directly on the left, it's going to be left, which is right here in this top left corner, but I want to space it horizontally. So what I want to do is I want to take the entire width of column N. I want to take the entire width of this and I want to subtract them. So let's just say this was 50, right? And this was 20, right? So then we're going to left with 30. So if I know I've got 30 spaces, I want to divide that up. I want to put 15 pixels here and I want to put 15 pixels on the right. So that's going to divide the spacing. So again, we take the entire width of column N, we take the entire width of this, and then we subtract that result and we divide it by 2. And that's just what we're going to do here. Then we add that to whatever the left position of column N is here. So the left position is equal to the starting out with that left position of column N. Then we're going to simply add the width of that column. Any row would do, the width of that column minus the width of the picture and divide that by 2. We're going to do something very similar with the vertical, right? So now the vertical is we're going to take the top position at the top part of N, row 12, top part of row 12, we're going to add to that. We're going to add basically based on the height of rows 12 through 19. Then we're going to subtract out the height of the picture, and we're going to divide that by 2, and that's going to center it vertically. Okay, we've gone over that before. All right, so new bills, right? This is the same macro. When we click new bills, what I want to do is I just want to set a default status, and I want to clear everything out. So to do that, the first thing we're going to do is take all those cells and clear the contents. We're going to delete any bill picture that might be there. And then what we're going to do is we're going to set the status, right? Set that default status to whatever's in C11. C11 along with our inside our admin screen, and that's going to be this unpaid here. So this is going to set that default status to whatever's in C11, and ours is unpaid. Great, so that's all we need to do for the new ones. Relatively simple, and then we're just going to select on J4, and that's going to allow the user to, let's say if I click new for it, it can allow the user to quickly add a vendor. Now when we add a vendor, you notice that automatically the vendor name, the address, the city, the state. How did we do that? Well, of course, that's going to be on a worksheet change event. Basically, when I make a change to J4, I want the address to load, that vendor information to load. That's why we are very important that we extract that vendor row. We know what row it is based on B8. As long as there's a value in there, I can then extract that information, the address from column E, city, state, and all that information. And that's going to be based on a change event, right? When I make a change here, J4 it is. So let's take a look inside this. Inside our bills, focused on the bill screen, and we're focused on the worksheet change event. And this time it's going to be J4, load vendor on name change. So as soon as we make a change to J4, and I want to make sure that B8, which is our vendor row, I want to make sure that's not empty. First of all, we're going to dimension the vendor row as long, and that's going to be based on whatever's located in B8. We're going to assign that macro. B8 is going to be our vendor row. Then all we're going to be doing inside J5, we're going to take the vendor name. The vendor address is going to go into J6, the city, J7, and so on and so forth. We're just extracting all that information out. And then also what I want to do is I want to set the vendor email. Otherwise, what if there's no vendor? If there's no vendor, we're going to clear it out. What does that mean by? That it means if I decide to click delete here, I want to make sure that all the vendor information is cleared out. So to do that, we're just simply going to check. Else, no vendor, meaning that in this case, B8 does not equal empty, but when B8 equals empty, I want to clear everything else out, clearing the contents of that. That's all. That's all we have to do to automatically add and update the vendor. And of course, that works on both on when we're loading it, and it works for new bills. So in both instances, we're making changes. In both instances, we want that vendor information to load. Okay, great. So I'm glad I got that covered. That's very important. And then continuing on inside our bill macros, right? We've covered the new bill. We want bill load. Now, when we load a bill, as I mentioned before, when I make a selection on a bill, I want that information to load up. I want to extract all that information based on the bill row here. If the bill row is empty, then we know it's inaccurate. So all we need to do is take whatever bill ID is located here in column D and place it directly inside B3. And that's just what we're going to do when we make a selection change event, right? Things start to happen when I make a selection change event. All right, anywhere from E all the way through G, when I make that, that's when I want something to happen. So when we take a look back inside our bills here, and we've scrolled down for worksheet selection change here. Here, we're going to make a selection change all the way from E through G on selection of bills. And I want to make sure that D contains a value. D is, of course, that is where our bill ID is located. So we need to make sure that bill ID gets placed directly inside B3. And then also what we want to do is I want to set the conditional formatting that the row that we selected is going to go directly into B6. That is going to contain, automatically trigger our conditional formatting. So you see B6 changes from 8 to 10 to 14. Okay, so once we have that, then all we need to do is simply run the macro called bill load that is going to load that macro up. So back inside our bills module, the next one we're going to focus on is bill load. And we want to clear the contents of some cells. It's almost the same as new, except the only difference is B3 and B6 are not selected. B3 is our bill ID. B6 is our selected row. I want to make sure that those don't get cleared out. Everything else, all of the fields associated with those bills gets cleared out. Any picture that's existing is going to get removed. Now what I want to do is I want to make sure that we have an accurate row. Remember, I can't load the bill if I don't actually have a row in B4. So we want to make sure that B4 is not empty. If B4 is empty, we're going to let the user know to please make sure to select a correct bill. And then we're going to exit the sub out. We're going to turn off application screen updating, and we'll turn it on before the macro ends. And what we're going to do is we're going to extract the bill row into a variable, long variable from B4. We're going to use the reverse data mapping, just as we did before. Instead of this case, we're loading from the database into the cell. So again, we're loading it from the bills database based on whatever the bill column, and we're going to place it directly inside whatever the ranges are located in row 1. That's data mapping. So in this case, all we're doing is simply looking up here, looking here. This is, let's say our result is coming in row 10. We're looking in that unpaid. We see it's unpaid, and we want to know exactly where to place it. We know to place it in L10. We know that bill date is going to be placed in J10. So that's all we have to do for data mapping. And then what we want to do is we want to make sure that we're going to trigger the vendor address load. And to do that, all I need to do, remember, I want to trigger that. So we just brought in all of our vendor information here, but I want to automatically, actually, we just brought in the vendor name here, but I want to trigger the address load. To do that, all I need to do is take whatever's located inside J5 and place it directly inside J4, because those changes to J4 is going to trigger that so that everything gets added up here. And so we do that directly here. J4 equals whatever's in J5, it's going to trigger that. And then what I want to do is if B10 is not empty, B10, of course, is where the name of that receipt is. So if we have a specific, and in this case, we do have a receipt name, if B10 is not empty, I want to run the macro that will display that receipt. So we already went over that macro, and that's right here. That's it. Okay, bill delete, very, very simple, very simple. In this case, I just want to give the users an option. Do you want to delete the bill? Of course, if they say no, we're going to exit out of the sub. Going to focus primarily on the bill sheet. We want to make sure that B4 is not empty. If it is empty, that's fine. All we need to do is go to not saved. We're going to skip down 2 rows, and we're going to go here. And then what we're going to do, but however, if it is not empty, meaning it has been previously saved, what's the difference? Well, let's say I create a new bill and I decide I want to put a vendor in here and I want to put in a bill date, right? But I decided I don't want to save it. I want to delete this bill. First, we're going to get the pop-up. Click yes. If I click, let's click no for now. If you see this bill hasn't been previously saved, there's no row associated with this because we have not saved it yet. But we still want to clear out the content. So when I click delete bill, and it says, do you want to delete it? And I click yes. Basically, what we want to do is we want to just clear it out. It hasn't been saved yet. However, it has been saved. B4 will already have a row. So we'll extract that row into a variable, and then we're just going to delete it from the database right here. If it's not saved, then we're going to run the macro that's going to clear out all the fields called bill new, and we're going to reload the list, load the list of all the bills. All right, great. Printing out, very, very simple. All we need to do is set the print area. If I decide I want to print it out, it's going to print out to the default printer, and it's going to be based on our print value. So here, of course, I printed it out. It'll print. There's nothing in here, but it's going to print the screen. All I did was previously set the print area. If I select here, just setting a specific print area, going into the page layout, and then, of course, print area, and then set the print area. That's going to set that print area. So if I decide I want to print something out and print the bill, now that we have data in here, it's going to print whatever's on the screen in that area here. Good. So we've got the print area there. That's pretty cool. Now what I want to do is I want to save the vendor. Remember, we previously went over this where we saved or update the vendor. If I decide I want to make a change to that, and I want to print Avenue, I want to make sure that that gets saved to the database. So if I'm going to change that, and I want to, let's say, make this Avenue, right? And I save that, I want to make sure that Nancy Smith those changes get saved. So let's load a different bill, and then let's load Nancy one more time. I want to make sure that those changes, Avenue, gets changed to the database. That's important, right? So how are we going to know? Well, first of all, we need to determine whether is it a new vendor or is it an existing vendor. How do we know that? Well, again, just like we did with the bills, we're going to set a specific row based on B8. If I have a new bill and I enter a brand new vendor, then I know there's no row associated with this. I know that if we decide to save this vendor, it's going to have to be saved to a brand new row. So, but however, it's an existing, it will already have a row associated with that. So to do that, first of all, we're going to focus on the bill screen. We're going to vendor row as long. If B8 is empty, we know it's a new vendor. We're going to set the new row based on the first available row. And we're also going to set that next vendor ID. That next vendor ID is going to go in column C in this case, and it's going to come directly from B. So column C is going to take that on right here inside our vendor list. Column C is going to get that vendor ID. And I also want to actually extract that. So it's coming from our bill and payments. It's going to come directly from our next vendor ID using the match formula in B9. Okay, great. So we have that. So, but if it's an existing vendor, all we need to do is extract the row from B9. Everything else is relatively the same. All we're going to simply be doing is saving it inside the database, so D, E, F, G, all the way through J, saving all the information. We're not using data mapping in this case. Okay, and then all again, we're going to set the vendor name. Setting that vendor name, J4, is going to take on whatever's in J5, and then just going to run that fade out message for vendor saved. That is it. That's all we have to do for the bill macros. Very, very cool. Okay, next up, we have the scheduling macros. And then lastly, of course, we'll do the dashboard. Dashboard is just one macro actually, and some really cool stuff. Okay, scheduling is relatively simple, but there's some really, really cool tricks. If you've seen my scheduling before, we have some similar ones, but this one includes a really, really cool dynamic criteria. So we can base it. We got 3 different dates in our database, right? If we take a look inside our database, we've got a bill date, I've got a due date, and I've got a payment date. So why not show you how we can create a calendar based on any one of those dates so we can display our bills any way we want. I also want to display custom colors. I want to give it a specific color. If I want to have unpaid, I want to put that in green. I can. If I go to the calendar here and I want to see there, now we see that they're in green, right? So we can also set some colors. So I'm going to show you how to do that. And of course, we've got some custom icons to do that. All right, this is a really fantastic scheduler because we've got a lot of features, right? We can navigate between months. We can go to this month or next month. We have a display by. Of course, we can show the bill dates, show only by the due date, so we can show which dates are due. And of course, the paid dates, right, which when they've been paid. Of course, we can select a different year if we want to. And also we can refresh it and just pretty much really cool, really cool. So I'm going to show you each one of these features. We've got custom icons, custom colors, and a whole lot more. Also, if we want to select on any bill, we can select on it, and it's going to go directly to that bill. Let me show you that again. So it's kind of quick. We've got this bill by John James. It's closed. We can select on it. It's going to go directly to that bill. We show that it's closed. So a selection of anyone will do that on Mac. Oh, my button disappeared here. There it is. There it is. Okay, so continuing on, we want to make sure that we display that accordingly, right? We have 3 different dates and we're going to display them. And what I want to do is I only want to extract those bills that have a specific date within this month, right? Within April. So how are we going to do that? Well, the first thing we want to do is we've got some information here. I'm going to go over it. Now, I'm not going to go into the creation of this calendar. We've used this many, many times before, and we've got a lot to cover. So I'm not going to go over into any of the details. I've done this before, and I'll include the link down below on that original, if I can find it, that original schedule when we did it, okay? But basically, we have the start date number. This is based directly on the admin screen. We have a start date number. So if I want to start it on Monday, we can, and we just need to refresh the schedule, and actually it's going to automatically refresh on selection. Then it's automatically going to, now we see we started on Monday, right? So we can easily start it on any day of the week if we want to, just by setting it up inside the settings, okay? Actually, as soon as we activate that sheet, it's automatically going to be refreshed. So we have the start date number, the month start, this is going to change, the selected month number, the selected year number. We have the select month, selected day, the month header, right? I want to know that month header. That's, of course, going to be based on our B4, whatever that start date is, and giving it a specific format, which is the long month and the year. And then I've had the select, this we don't need. This is from a prior training. We don't need that. That's another thing. The selected year option, right? I want to know, what does that mean? That means if I change the year here, 2021 was the first year. If I do 2023, right? Of course, there's no data here, but I want that to go to 2, right? So that's going to be the second year. That's our option. And of course, we can put it back. We don't have any data for 2023, just the current year, 2022. It's going to automatically refresh. So, and also want to know if there's schedule been changed. I want to display by number. Now, this is kind of important. Notice we have display by here, display by number. I want a number associated with that. If I right click here and I click the format control, we see that we have the input range is going to be displayed by. That displayed by is these 3 items: bill date, due date, and paid date, all the way from A18 through A20. And we have a cell link. It's linked to B13. This is the display by number, right? I want to know whether it's 1, 2, or 3. So that way, if I change this to pay date, this is going to show 3. I also want to show the option. What is the option? We can use the index, and I'm going to index that display by, and I want to know what number, B13, and I want to know the column, which is 1. And then also, if there's an error, I just want to display whatever's located in A19, of course, which is the first one, which is actually we could do, which is due date. That's fine. Do the due date or bill date, generally due date. So I'm going to, if there's an error, I'm just going to put in the due date. Okay. All right. So what I want to do is I want to display. So basically, if I change this to bill date, I want this to change to bill date, and so on and so forth. So how are we going to do that? Well, the best way to do that is simply to use a formula, and we could just use that index formula. I've got my display and I've got the years here. So these years are pertain to this drop down list. This display by number is very important. This is also very important. We're going to get into that a little bit later because we have to know what a column. Remember, we are going to extract data, but only data based on this month. We don't know what data. We don't know if it's the bill date, the due date, or the pay date, but we do know the month. So we need to set some criteria based on that. And that's going to be in the bills database. So this database, now we're going to be based on the schedule criteria. Here we've got some criteria. We know the month start, right? Why do we know that? Because the month start is located right here. This right here, this named range is called month start, and that is in B4, month start. That is a specific date, month 4. So what I want to do is I want everything greater or equal to that month start. And so the best way to do that is simply add in a formula for that. So inside the bills database, we have a formula. It's going to be greater than equal to the month start. And then I want the last day of the month. We can use end of month formula for that. The end of the month is based on this month right here, month start. And we want 0 months ahead, 0 months back. So I want that exact month. That's going to provide this formula here. So basically, then what I want to do is I want to determine what exactly are we going to be filtering? Are we filtering the bill date? Are we filtering the due date, or are we filtering the pay date, right? So make sure that these names are the same. Bill date has to be bill date, pay date, or are we talking about here the due date? So either one of those 3. So we have what's called a dynamic criteria, just as we used before. That dynamic criteria is going to be based directly on schedule B14. That's right here. Remember, that's where we have B14. So as we change this, both our criteria changes too. So now we're going to be formatted based on that. So the pay date now. So this is going to be linked to B14. Therefore, our criteria is dynamic also, both criteria. What that's going to do is going to get us our results. Our results are going to come right here. Okay, so the last 3 columns I have are bill date, due date, and pay date. But not only that, what I want to do then is I want to run a sort. And I want to run that sort based on the date, right? So if it's pay date here, I want the earliest date here, and I want the latest date here. I want to sort those columns. But I don't know what I want to sort bill date. I want to sort due date, or I want to sort pay date, right? I want to sort one of these columns based on this. So based on whatever date. So notice here, it's not. But if I change this to bill date, you're going to see 3-1 on top of here, right? Actually, you're going to see that. So how do we do that? Well, actually, the earliest date here, which is going to be 4-1. So let's take a look back inside the bill schedule. This time, we're going to do bill date. So what we're going to be doing is we're going back in here. Now we see bill date here. 4-1 to 4-15. So see the sort order? These are all messed up. I want to sort it based on whatever the filter is. So I want to sort it based on a specific column. What column is this? I want to sort it based on the column. Take a look at this. This is column 38, right? So if I know I want to sort it on column 38, how am I going to get 38? How do I know it's 38? How do I know this is 38, this is 39, and this is 40, right? So how do I know that, right? Well, here's what I do know. I know that inside the schedule, I know that 1 is going to be the bill date. I know that 2 is going to be the due date, and 3 is going to be the pay due date. If I know that this is 1, the bill date is 1, and I also know that it is this column 38 right here, it's gone right here. I know this is 38. All I need to do is take 37, which is this column, and add 1 to get to this column. So that means I know I'm going to be sorting column 38 or 39 or 40 based on 37. We're starting at 37 plus whatever is located here. 37 plus 1 plus 2 or plus 3. That's going to get us our sort column. That will come in important because I want to sort them, right? Not only do I want to filter them, but I want to sort them. The database. Let's put the database here. I'm used to it being on the right side. So the bill database. Okay, there we go. So the bill schedule is here. The bill database here. So we know we're going to extract that information. We're going to sort it. Once it's sorted, I'm going to loop through every single one all the way from 3 to 20. I'm going to look for this specific date or this date or this date based on the schedule. Once I find it on the schedule, I'm going to take that vendor name here and I'm going to place it. And based on the status, I'm going to set the status and I want to set an icon. So if it's unpaid, I want to do 2 things. If it's unpaid, I want to use the unpaid icon. How do I know where this unpaid icon is? Located in this folder icons. And so if we take a look inside my folder here, we see inside this, I've got several icons. So we take a look down here, we've got unpaid here. I've got paid in full here. They're white icons, so partially paid here. So I've got icons located in that folder there. And so they're located in this folder, and we've set up the exact icon names, partial pay. And I've also set some colors. These are the colors that I want to display for these shapes. And I've got the icon associated with that. That's all going to be placed inside the schedule here. So we're going to have all of that inside that. All right, great. And what we want to do is I want to place shapes. So to place those shapes, I need to create a sample shape, and I'm going to call it sample bill shape. This shape is going to be duplicated. We're going to add the vendor name. We're going to add the icon. We're going to set the color, and we're going to place it in the appropriate row. If the specific date has more than one bill, I want to drop it down lower. We've been over the scheduling before, but the repetition helps. If you've seen it before, it really, really helps. You can create this very, very fast. Okay, we're going to dimension a bunch of variables. We'll get into those as we move through there. The first thing I want to do is set the schedule change to true. This is going to help us exit out of it. I don't think it's that important for this particular training. I'm going to set the sort column. Sort column. Remember, we just went over this. B13, the schedule B13. That's 1, 2, or 3. B13 right here, it's 1, 2, or 3 based on whatever we set here. I need to know that sort column. Remember, if that sort column is 40, which is this one right here, this is column 40, right? Equals column. Okay, if it's 40, then I need to know, this is based on date, so let's go back to general here, set this to general. If it's 40, I need to know it's 37 plus 3. So that's how we get column 40. That's how we get our sort column. I want to make sure it is a sort column. And also it's going to be based on that. So again, it's our schedule 3 plus 37. It's going to set our sort column. Whatever's here plus 37. Bill date, due date, or pay date. Okay, now that we know what column we're going to be sorting, we can clear any and all existing bills and shapes. So I want to make sure that anything with bill item gets removed. And I want to make sure anything that contains the word icon gets removed. Why is that important? Well, of course, these are called, there's a group. Once we create them, we're going to create a group. The icon and the shape together create a group. It's going to be called bill item group 6. Bill item group 6. And also, I'm going to create these icons. If you can't see it quite here, let's do our selection here. And we've got a bunch of icons here. And I'm going to move them right over this green here, and then we're going to be able to see them. So once we move them over, we see we've got some icons here. Now, what I want to do is I want to take these 4 icons. I want to extract them. I want to create them. Why is that important? Because if I decide I want to change these icons here, any icon, I want to take the icon folder, I want to take the icon name, and I want to take that icon, and I want to put it directly on the schedule. I want to put it directly on here inside of hidden. Okay, so notice how every time we refresh the schedule, it automatically creates those, which is exactly what I want. So every time they're so you see they're kind of big here, which is fine. And this is just a macro that we assigned to the icons. That's not going to work unless that's okay. That bug just means I selected on one of those icons. Normally, if we select on an icon, it's going to create this bug because there's nothing we can set. But of course, these are going to be hidden, right? So these icons we don't worry about. However, when we select on these icons, that is very important. That's going to create that's why we want to create a macro. So what we did is we assigned the macros to these sample shapes here, but nobody would select them because they're going to be hidden. All we need to do is just hide those columns, make sure you hide them. So, but the macro that's assigned is very important. So when we click on the samples, it's going to create a bug, but nobody will click on the samples. They will create on the existing one. That's fine, so don't worry about that. Okay, so basically what I want to do is I want to recreate these icons. So each time we refresh the schedule, I want to delete these icons. So I've given them a very specific name. Each one of them is called icon 4, icon 1, icon 2, icon 3. So I've given a name. So I'm going to delete all those, and I want to delete all the shapes associated with basically clearing out all the shapes. So to do that, right, when we go back into the schedule and on the refresh, let's go all the way up here. Schedule, clearing out any shape that contains the word bill item, any shape that contains icon. That will do it. We're just going to run a loop through all the shapes in the sheet to do that. All right, the next up, like I said, I want to get those icons. I've just deleted them all, but in case the user made any changes, I want to make sure that we will go ahead and update those. So we're going to set that icon folder in what's located in E6. And I also want to make sure it's not empty. If it's empty, let the user know to please browse for any icons set in icon folder and run the macro to do that. And if it's still empty after that, actually we need to reset it here, right? It's going to be empty, of course. So we need to reset the variable here. And then if it's still empty after that point, then of course we will exit the sub. There's no icons. We can skip the icons, at least for that part. We don't need to skip the icons. We don't need to exit out. We just need to skip icons. Assuming that we do have a correct folder, then I want to loop through for icon number equals 1 through 5. We're going to loop through the admin. We're starting here, and we're going to all the way loop from 11 all the way through 15. If there is a name, if there's a value located in D, we're going to combine the folder with the icon to create a full file path. So that file path is fadmin D plus 10, right, starting on row 11. E does not equal empty. That means we have a file name. And then what we want to do is create a path. It's going to be based on that folder plus the backslash plus whatever's in D and the folder. That's going to give us our full icon path. I want to make sure that it is an accurate icon path. So we're going to use if directory, icon path, VB directory. If it does not equal empty, then what we want to do is we can then insert that just as we did before based on the schedule pictures insert that icon path. We're going to give it a very specific name called icon and the icon number, right? So it's going to be icon number 1 or through 4. We don't have a 5th icon. That's fine. All right. So with the schedules, then what we're going to do is I'm just going to place them in column A and then row 18, just basically off the screen. So we're just going to place all of them, and then we're going to increment it 1 down. So A plus 18 plus the icon number. So we're just adding it. So because I don't want them on top of each other, I want them based on here. So inside our schedule here, it's going to start off on row 18, 19, and 20, just to place them. You know, it can be anywhere just off the screen. It's fine. You could also hide them too, but I want to make sure to show you for the training. So there's no, okay, so I'm going to assign a macro to this. This is nice. We can assign a macro here or on the schedule. Either one is fine. If we don't want to, we don't necessarily need to do this step, but when we down in the macro, when we create those icons right here, we can do it here. So probably better not to, right? If I don't assign the macro here, let's clear that out, right? We don't need to assign it here when we create it. I don't need to assign a macro to the samples. That's what my point is. So now this will automatically refresh. So now what happened there? What did I do? Well, because I decided that as soon as I activate this sheet, I want to run this macro. So as soon as I go into the schedule here and I decide I want to activate that sheet, I'm going to refresh the schedule. That's why everything reset. Now it's probably better. Now there's no macros assigned to these, which is fine, but there are macros still assigned to these. So we don't necessarily need to assign macros to the sample, probably not necessary. So that's all we did. We just clear it out. We don't necessarily, but we will once we duplicate those icons and we put them directly on the schedule, then we do want to create it. So we're going to lock the aspect ratio and give it a specific height. That's good enough for that. Okay, so we're just going to loop through. That's going to create those 4 sample icons. Now we've got them ready to put on our schedule. Now we're going to focus on the bills database. This is where we need to run our advanced filter, getting all of those particular bills based on whether it's the pay date, the bill date, or the due date inside there. So we're going to set the last row based on the last row. If it's less than 4, we're going to exit the sub. That means we have no data. We're going to clear any results. I want to clear the previous results. Generally, VBA will do this automatically when we run it, but I want to ensure that it does. So what we're going to do is all the way from AA3 all the way through AN, clearing out any results, previous results that have been there. So then what we're going to do is we're going to run our advanced filter, basically A3 all the way through U. Is that the right column? That sounds, it should be N, right? A3 through N, but that's okay. And I'm going to run that advanced filter based on A3 through N. We're going to have that criteria W2 through X3. That criteria is based on that scheduling criteria here, W2 through X3. And we want those results coming in through AA all the way through AN. That's where the results are going to come. So we've got those results AA through AN. Okay, we're going to check the last results row, making sure that we have last results row, making sure that we actually have results for the specific month. And we're going to check on column AA. All right, assuming that we do have, that means if the last results row are less than 3, then exit the sub. That means there are no results, so we can exit out of the sub. However, what I want to do is I want to perform a sort. Remember, we're going to be sorting based on one of these columns. But if there's only one row value, if there's only single, there's no reason to sort it, right? So we're going to run a check for that. If the last result row is less than 4, then there's no reason to sort it. So we can do that here. If the last results row is less than 4, then go to no sort. It's going to skip it and go directly down here. But we do want to run a sort. Now remember, we've got a dynamic column sort. We're either going to run that sort based on column 38, 39, or 40. Right? So that's why we have that column number in a variable, 38, 39, or 40, because we don't know which column we're sorting. So we're going to set the add key. We're going to add a key based on the bills database. I want to use row 3, right? That's our first row of data. And then what column are we sorting? We're sorting based on that sort column. And that sort column is right here into the variable, 38, 39, or 40. That's how we can dynamically sort. We're going to sort ascending. We want the lowest, the earliest date first, and the latest date second. And then what we're going to do is we're going to set that entire range, AA3 through AN last row. We're going to sort that. So everything's going to be sorted when we apply it. Now we've got everything. So now we're all ready. Now our data's all ready. We're going to take that data and we're going to create based on those schedules. So we're going to run a loop, just as I mentioned before, from that first row to the last results row. We're going to set that bill ID located in column AA into a variable, right? I want that bill ID. Here's our bill ID, putting this into a variable. There we go. So once we got the bill ID, and then what I want to do is I want to add in the schedule date. What is the date of that schedule? Now this gets a little bit tricky. Where is that? It's located in that column, right? It's located in the row. We don't know if it's column 38, 39, or 40, but we do know the variable sort column is going to keep track of that column. So if I know the row and I know the column, then I know what date to extract because it's variable. So the schedule date's based on the cells, the result row, and the sort column, 38, 39, or 40. That's either the bill date, the due date, or the pay date. Okay, so now we have this called the schedule date. And I want to extract the vendor name located in column AB. And the bill status, I want that bill status coming from AC. What is the status of that bill? Okay, now what I want to do is I want to extract an icon number, right? I want to know. There's an icon. Fully paid has an icon. Unpaid has an icon, right? So if I know it's fully paid, then I want to extract paid in full. I want to extract the name of this based on when it's found. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to search all the statuses. I'm going to determine what row if it's found. If it's found, I'm going to look in column D, and I'm going to extract the icon name from there. Or at least the icon number, right? If I know that this is, well, icon 1, icon 2, icon 3, and icon 4. If I know that it's icon, right, and I know it's found on row 11, if I subtract 10 from that, I know it's icon 1. If I subtract 10, I know it's icon 2. So we just need to find it to do that. So the first thing what we're going to do is we're going to get that bill status, right? And then what I want to look for that bill status, and I want to use a find, right? Admin status. We're going to look for that. I'm going to find it. If it's found, I'm going to subtract 10, right? I want the icon number. I want 1, 2, 3, or 4. Why is that important? Because in our schedule, our icon here are named that. It's kind of hard to see because they're in white, but here, this is icon 1. Let's zoom in a little bit so you guys can see that. There we go. There they are. Barely. They're white. Okay, so this is icon 1. This is icon 2. This is icon 3. And this is icon 4. Okay, so we have all the icons here. So if I know that fully paid is icon 4, so if I know here, if it's found, actually closed, right? If I subtract 10, it's going to get us the number 4 if it's found on row 14. So that's all we have to do in order to get to it. So we just need to extract that icon number. Okay, so to do that inside the code, we're going to get the icon number is basically the row that it's found. Here's the row that it's been found on, and subtracting 10. Now I know the icon number. If it's not 0, then we can assign an icon. If the icon number is not 0, I also need a color, right? Where's the color? The color is also located in row D. So here's the color. So all I need to do is extract the color from the cell, and I know what color sample to set our shapes here. I know what color here. Taking our sample shape, duplicating it, and then setting the color based on that. So we're going to set the color. So if the icon number is not 0, then the build color is going to be basically whatever's in column D and the icon number plus 10. We could use the found row. So basically we reduced it from 10 because we need to get the icon number, but we're adding it back here because I need to know the actual row number. I need the actual row. What is the interior color of that cell? Getting that interior color, putting it in a variable called build color will allow us to color that shape. Okay, great. So now that we have that, what I want to do is I want to know how many bills in a day. That's very important because if there's more than one, I need to know to increment it 1 row down. If we saw here inside the bill date, we had more than one, right? There were 3 of them all on here on the 5th of April. So there's 3 different bills with a bill date. So I need to drop one out. So basically what I need to do is I need to count how many bills are in a given day. If there's 1, we know to place it on top. But if there's 3, I need to know to drop it down and down. So that way they don't get on top of each other. All right, so to do that, we need to increment the top section, the top basically position of that. Okay, so the daily bill count is going to equal to the application count if. Now we're going to count it based on a named range. Now this gets interesting too. So what I want to do is inside our bills database, I want to create a named range. I want to create a named range of all these dates, or all these dates, or all these dates. And I wanted to determine how many. So remember, we saw that on the 5th, there were 3, right? But how do I know what column? I want to create a named range. And I want to base that named range on whatever the column is. So that I want to count how many are on the 5th so that I know once the 5th, we've got 3 different bills on the 5th. But to do that, I need a named range, a very specific named range based on a dynamic column, this one, this one, or this one. So how are we going to do that? Well, if we take a look, let's get the name of that. It's going to be called bill date results, bill date results. So that named range, if we go into the formulas, name manager, and we take a look here into build date results, we're going to be using a dynamic named range. It's going to be based on starting in AK2, right? So here's the first one. So that's 1. And what I want to know is based on, I want to add 1 column. Why AK? AK is the amount due. That doesn't make sense, right? It does. It does make sense because we're going to offset that. We're going to offset it to different columns. We're going to offset it 1, 2, or 3, right? If it's bill date 1, 2, or 3, we're going to offset it. So we're starting in AK, and then we're going to offset. So offsetting, starting here, and we're offsetting, what are we going to offset? I'm offsetting 1 row down because it's going to start in A3. We're offsetting also 1 column. Which column? It's going to be columns based on B13, right? I'm going to offset the column. Starting at AK, how many columns are we offsetting? It's based on the schedule B13. If we escape out of there real quick, just a reminder, B13, we're offsetting that column. We're offsetting it either 1, 2, or 3. So back in here and back into the name manager. Okay, so basically that bill due results, we are going to offset the column, right? So B13, this is very important, offsetting that column 1, 2, or 3. Then all we need to do is count the number of results based on column AA, because AA is our bill ID, of course that's required, so we can count those. So now we know And of course, we're going to subtract 1 because we're also counting the header row, which is 2, which we want to exclude. And then we want just a single column of results, so we're going to put in 1. That's how we have a dynamic offset based on dynamic columns, based on either bill date, due date, or paid date. So it's going to be how now it's based on bill date. So if I see this, we see those dancing ants around bill date. If I close this out and I go to the bill schedule and I change this to due date and go back into the formulas, name manager, and we check it out one more time, there's results. We take a look at the dancing ants are now around due date. So again, dynamic columns on the dynamic. So it's dynamic both on the columns and on the number of rows. So offset's a really cool way to use that. So what I want to do, again, like I mentioned before, I want to count the number of days. I want to count the number. I want to know that the 5th, let's base that. I'm going to change that back to bill date here because I know we've got 3 on the 5th and I want to use that as a sample. Back into the bills date. Okay, so I want to know that there's 3 bills on the 5th. So we're going to use that count if. Day bill count. Once we find that we're going to check that scheduled date, we're going to count all of the dates, how many dates inside this dynamic named range. Get the number of bills in a day. Okay, so now what we want to do is I want to loop through. I want to make sure that the number of bills are not more than 10. And if they are, then just keep it at 10. So we're going to take a look at this because I figure we've got a maximum of 10. We can have 2 possible columns and we can have 5 possible bills per column. So that would leave us with 10. So to do that, we're going to set the maximum of 10. If the day bill count is greater than 10, the day bill count equals 10. Set the maximum number of bills in a day to 10. Also, what I want to do is if the day bill count is greater than 1, then set the bill number, right? I want to keep track. Right? Bill number in the day, bill number 1, bill number 2, bill number 3. I want to keep track of the bill numbers in a specific day. So that means if the day bill count, we're going to count as we move through all the bills in the day, we're going to keep track of them. If it's greater than 1, we're going to increment the bill number. This is very important because I need to move that top position down, down, and down, right? As we know, I don't want them on top of each other. Okay, so we're going to keep track of that. This is going to, else the bill number equals 1. So basically, this is going to set the number of bills. We're going to keep track of how many bills we are going through a day. If the bill number is equal to 1, then we want to do, only for the bill number 1, I want to know where, I want to find it. What day should it go? If I loop through all of these days, I want to find that date. These are dates. Keep in mind that this 5 is actually a date. If I change this to a date here, we will see that it's actually the short date. So keep that in mind. That's actually a date. So what I want to do is I want to look for that. And we can go back and change it to custom. That's actually in custom format. All we need to do is just put in the D, and that will be a single digit. Okay. All right. So what I'm going to do now in the code, if it's 1, that means it's our first one in a day. We are going to have to locate that on our calendar, right? So I'm going to loop. I'm going to run 2 loops. I'm going to run 1 loop for the rows and another for the columns. So the calendar rows are 4 through 36. Why is that? Row 4, row 10, row 16, and so we're skipping, right? We're skipping. So we're going to step 6, right? Every 6th row from 4 to 34. I'm also going to do the calendar columns from column 5 all the way to column 11, right? So the last one, this is column 11, right? So we're going to go all the way through. And we're just basically going to check, is this date here? Is this date the right? Did we find the date? If it is, place that shape right here. So we're going to look for that. So if we're going to run our loop. So if the schedule under that row, under that column, the value of this, the date on the schedule, is equal to the date of our bill, then we know to place it. Then we're going to set the schedule row and we're going to set the schedule column. And we're going to go to create the bill. We can create the bill, create the shape for that bill right there. Okay, so we're going to continue the looping for that. Now what we're going to do is we're going to set the bill number. Remember, the bill numbers are going to be the first 5 here. First 5, we need to set the top position. So our first 5, we're going to go up here. Here's our top one right here. And then what we're going to do is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If it's 6, I'm going to start up at the top again. If it's 6, I'm going to shrink the bill width, right? I want that bill width to be about like that, right? Although that won't show much, but I want that bill width to be about like that so I can put 2 columns of bills. So if the bill number equals 6, then we're going to set the schedule row back to the schedule row minus 4, right? Else the schedule row is equal to schedule row plus. Basically, we're going to set it, right? If it goes from 5, it should probably be 5. So we're going to set it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Otherwise, it's going to go from 5 back to 1. So it goes back up to the top, right? For the second column, we need to back up to the top. So that's why if it's 6, because we don't want 6, we don't have enough spaces for 6. We only have 5. So if we set it, if it gets to 6, right, we need to set it back up to the top. And then, of course, move it over to the right a little bit. So if the bill number is 6, then the schedule row equals schedule row minus 4, else just increment it 1, meaning that 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so continuing on. Then we're ready. If the schedule row equals 0 or the schedule column equals 0, then go to next bill, right? I need to actually have a row. I need to actually have a column in order to place. Now we're ready to go. So now what I want to do is I want to take that sample shape that you saw right here and I want to duplicate it. This shape right here, I want to duplicate it and then basically color it accordingly based on the status, add an icon, add the vendor name, and place it on the schedule. So the first thing what we want to do is duplicate it. Schedule shapes sample bill shape, this one. I'm going to duplicate it. I'm going to give it a very unique name called schedule bill, and then give it the bill ID. Therefore, it's going to be unique. I also want to know the width. If the day bill count is greater than 5, meaning we're going to add then the bill width is going to be less, right? Basically, if that means if I have more than 5 bills in a day, I want the width of it to be half of what it should be. However, if it's not, then basically make the full width of that column. So if the bill width greater, set the bill width basically half of the column width, taking that column width and dividing it 2. Otherwise, the bill width is equal to the full width of the column. That's going to set the width of the bill. Also, if the bill number is greater than 5, then I want to set the left position. The left position is going to be the left plus whatever the schedule bill width is, right? So basically what I want to do is I want to take the left position of that current and I want to add in the schedule width, the left of it divided by 2, right? The width of that divided by 2, setting that bill. But that's only if the bill number is greater than 5. And basically what that's going to do, if it's greater than 5, I'm going to put it right here or I'm going to put it here based on that. Otherwise, the left position is simply the left position, right? If we're counting the number of bills, we get to the 6th bill. We've got 1. It would look like this. I'm going to duplicate that, right? We look down here, here, and one more, right? So we're at, let's say we're at 4 or 5, right? So we get to, let's do one more. So we get to that 5th bill, right? We got 5 bills here. Now it's greater. Now we're on the 6th bill. What do? We move the left position here, moving it and putting it up on the top of here. So now we've got it up here. So basically we need to set that left position and we need to reset the top position for that 6th bill up at the top here. So the left position is equal to the left of the cell, or if we're more than 5, we're going to set that left position based on basically we're going to set the left position, the column width divided by 2, the column width divided by 2. That's it. Also, now what we'll do is we're ready to place it. With that brand new shape that we just created, we're going to set the left position based on the bill left. We're going to set the top position based on the schedule row, the top, plus the schedule column, okay? The top position, right? What is that column there? And the schedule row. Remember, we've set the schedule row already here, right? We're resetting that schedule row all the way up here. We need to know based on right here, the schedule row equals calendar row. Great, so we've got the schedule row, so we're setting and replacing them. We're going to set the width, right? Now we're going to set the height, making sure that we have a height. And I want to add in some text, right? I want to add in that vendor name. So we want to put in that vendor name right here inside the text of that. We could probably move it over a little bit, right? It's a little bit over. So if we want to move it over to the left a little bit, so we can do that, put it in here, left, or we can add in the left position here. We go into the size and properties, and then we go into the text options. We can see that the text here inside this properties here, we can set the left margin. Maybe we'll do 0.2, right? It's going to move it over a little bit. That's all we probably need. And all we need to do is just simply refresh it, and it's going to move everything over a little bit. That's sufficient. So we're going to set the text frame. We want to put that vendor name directly in the text. This is where we can assign that macro. That macro, which we haven't got into yet, it's going to assign a macro that's going to allow us, when we click it, to go directly to the bill. So we want to make sure that we assign that macro to each individual shapes, and we do that directly here. Then all I want to do is I want to set the bill color. I want to set the color of that shape, making sure that the color of that bill is not empty. If it's not, then we're going to take that shape. We're already with that shape here, and we're just going to set the fill color based on the 4-color RGB. This is the color of that shape based on that bill color. Remember, that bill color was extracted from here, right? All the way up here. If we look on where we extracted it from right here. That bill color is equal to based on D, the interior color of column D, directly inside our admin screen. That bill color is going to be one of these colors right here. Great. So we understand how we get that color and we understand how we're placing it. Now, once we have that color, that's it. That's all we have to do with it. We've already placed it. We colored it. But now what I want to do is I want to create a group. So basically what I want to do is I want to group the two shapes, the icon if we place it and the shape, and I want to put it in a specific group, and we're going to call it bill item group. It is not a necessary step, but it is an optional step. It's helpful if we're going to eventually add drag and drop, then it's helpful to have it as a group. Okay, great. So we have now, so to group it, what I want to do is I want to take the name that we created, which is going to be this name right here, the name that we added here when we created that name. I want to take this text, schedule bill, and I want to put it into a string variable and call it group string here is equal to the schedule bill and the bill ID. So basically we're just adding it. This is the first part of our string. Now what we're going to do is we can add in the icons, right? I want to make sure that the bill status is not empty, and I want to make sure the icon name does not equal empty. Now we're ready to add in those icons. So we can do that. Remember, we've already got the icon number 1, 2, 3, or 4. So we're going to take that icon. These are the sample icons. We're going to duplicate it, and we're going to set a specific name called bill icon and then the bill ID. That's going to be a unique icon name based on the bill ID. Then all we want to do is simply place it based on the bill left and move it over a little bit, few pixels, not to the exact left, 4 positions to the exact left. So we see it's slightly moved over to the right, not exactly on the end. Okay, also what I want to do is I want to set the top section based on the current top selection +3. We don't want it directly on the top. And then here's where we assign the macro to the icon, right? So we're assigning the macro here. We don't need to assign it to the samples, so here. And then also what I want to do is I want to create a string, and I want to add whatever was here already, which is this up here, plus I want to add in this, okay? So now we've got a string. Now what I'm ready to do is I want to group these. I want to take this entire string and I want to group it. So the first thing what we're going to be doing is create an array based on all the shapes in here. Basically, it's going to be just 2 items in the array. It's going to be bill icon, and of course they're separated by a comma here inside the string. So what we can then do is we can then split it, because what I want to do is I want to split that string based on the delimiter, which is that comma, and I want to create an array of shapes. Once we create an array of those shape names, we can easily group it. So we can do it through here. Schedule shapes range. We can use the shapes range, group based on the name of those shapes, group array, group, and giving it a very specific name called bill item group and bill ID. That's going to group both the icon and the shape into a group. Then we're going to clear out the vendor name. We're going to clear out the group string. That's it. And we just loop through each of the bills, placing them directly on the schedule. Now what I want to do is I want to check if the bill number is greater than the day bill count, then the bill, we're resetting the bill number based on the last bill of the day, right? As we go through that, right? If the bill number is greater than or equal to bill count. So basically, once we get to, if the day bill count, let's say is 5, and we've already got to the bill number 5, right? We've already placed all the bills in any given day. We're already at the limit for that day. We're going to reset that bill number to 0. That's going to allow it to reset. That's it. And we're just going to loop through all the results row and then turn on application screen updating. That is it. Okay, there's another macro, the same macro that we assigned to both the icon and the shape. And that's, of course, you've seen that before, where we select on it and it goes directly to the bills in the bill screen. So how do we make that happen? How do we have that? Well, basically what I want to do is, we know already based on the original training, we know if I take a bill ID and I place that bill ID directly in B3 here, then it's we can then simply run the macro to load it in. The only critical thing is that we have the bill ID in B3 and we extract a correct row located in B4. So we can ensure those two things. So all I need to do when I run the macro is, if I've got a shape name, for example, schedule bill 9, if I remove the words schedule bill, or in the icon per se, and I remove bill icon, and it's going to leave me with 9. So I need that 9. That 9 is very important. That is the ID. So if we notice that both the shape has 8 digits and then the ID, and the icon also has 8 digits and then the ID, the bill ID, if I remove the first 8 digits, then automatically it's going to leave us with the ID. And basically based on the shape they called it, using application, the name of the shape they called it. So that macro bill select, all I need to do is set the bill ID as long and the bill row as long. That bill ID, again, all I need to do is take those 8 characters, the first 8 characters, and replace them with nothing, right? So taking those using the replace function and the application caller, meaning the name of the shape that the user clicked when they clicked that shape. What is the name of this shape? Removing the first letters and replacing them with nothing, the first 8 letters, using the left position here, left command here. Then what we're going to do is simply extract it. So whatever else is left is the bill ID. Then all I want to do is turn off application screen updating, set B3 inside the bill screen. Remember, setting the bill ID to B3, activating the bill screen, and running the macro to load. Great, so that's all I need to do. But then I want to do one more. This needs to be D, okay? This is important. So notice, let's look in the dashboard, bills and payments. Notice this, it was selected, but probably the wrong one selected. This is 4, right? This is ID 4, right? So notice this was incorrect. I just fixed it now. Jackie Tubman, right? This is the bill that we selected. This is number 9, right? Number 9 here, bill ID number 9, bill ID number 9. But look, the wrong one is selected. But I want to search column D. I want to look for, let's see, it's going to be 5. It's not here yet, but it will be in a second. Let's clear that out. Oops, we lost our option box for a second. Okay, let's show them all. Okay, I want to show them all because I want to select it if it's found, right? So let's select that. Okay, so now what I want to show is I want to show 9. So basically what should be selected automatically, notice this is 9. What should be selected is is 15, right? I want to select this, okay? So when I select something else, I'm just going to select something else now. What I want to do is when I click on this one here, let's find that one here. There was this one right here. This is 9, right? When I select on this, I want to make sure that the row is selected. Let's take a look here. I want to make sure that this one gets selected. I want to look for that 9 in this column. I had the wrong column before. I want to look for it, and I want to make sure it's here, okay? So how do we do that? Well, we could do that. That's the last step of this macro. We're going to take that bill ID here, and we're going to look for it. That's located here. It's also, we can also put in bill ID. We have it here, bill. We have the variable here. We don't need to. We're looking for that bill ID. Where are we looking? I'm looking in column D of the bills. And if the column is found, I'm going to place it in B6. So it works just fine. So let's try it again with another one. So let's say we have this one here. This is schedule bill number 2. So if I click here, I want that one, this particular bill, bill number 2 here, Dolores Richmond, I want that to show up. And now it's working perfectly. Now we see automatically the selected row, which is, in this case, it is 8, is placed directly in B6. So that selected row is automatically highlighted. So we can find it. B6 is going to take on whatever row this bill ID was found in column D, and that's the selected row. Okay, good. And then we're going to turn on application screen updating. All right, very cool. We are not going to get into the month, right? Previous month is simply going to allow us to navigate the month because we're running long already. Previous month, I don't want to put enough time into the dashboard. Basically, it's going to reduce the month and then increase the month. So that's all we need to do, and then just refreshes it. So all we're pretty much doing is just changing this month number as we navigate through, right? Or the current month, or we navigate through. Okay, that's it for the month. So that's it for these macros. So we have previous month, next month, and this month. You can take a look at that when you download it. Great. Also, of course, if you do want me to see something add to this, right, we're going to be doing that through our Patreon platform. In our Patreon platform, I've got tons of features. So if you haven't joined yet, please do so. And that means that if you want something added, if you see something that I left off, you want your own feature added, I'll add to this. Next Monday, I'll be adding to this, right? So let me know what you want. Also, if you see some area you want me to focus on or fix, I can do that, and that all happens in our Patreon platform. Our Patreon members also get all of the downloaded resources. That includes the icons, the pictures, and everything else I use. They also get a PDF codebook, and that is a beautiful PDF codebook along with live links for table of contents and index and perfectly tabbed out and color-coded code to help you learn. So that's our Patreon platform, plus early bird discounts, early videos, and a whole lot going on our Patreon. I'll include the links down below. It'd be great to see you inside our Patreon platform. All right, great. So that's it for the schedule. We've covered that. And next up, what I want to do is cover this incredible dashboard, right? So I've got payables by vendor. I have, we've got basically a slicer if we only want to show closed. If we only want to show fully paid or unpaid or partially paid, we can do that, showing all that. Also, what I want to do is I want to know payables due by month. How many on a month? Or maybe we want to set a specific year. We only have 1 year yet. but we can use this timeline to do it. I also want to know status by period, right? How many are closed, fully paid, right? How many, and maybe I want to know only a specific month or maybe multiple months, right? So we can use the timeline to do that. And then also I want to know when the next payments are due. I want a quick preview of the next payment. Notice Nancy Smith's got a due date of March 29. So, and the amount due is 21. I want a quick look of the next 10 payments that are due. And I also want to have a summary of the payables due by breakdown. I want to know how many are overdue, how many are due, and how many are current. So this gives us a breakdown. I also want to know the percentage that's overdue. What percentage of them is overdue? So that's going to help us out. All right, so how do we do all that? Well, we can do all that, of course, when we have a table set up. Our bills database, we have a table set up here already. And the name is called here bill data. So I've created a table here, and it's going to help us. And then what we do is we're going to create some pivot charts, right, and some pivot tables. I've created some pivot tables right here. To create a pivot table, all you need to do is go into the database here, and all we want to do is just click Insert here, and then you have the availability of both pivot chart and pivot table. So when we click pivot chart or pivot table, it's going to ask us, where do I want that? I'll give it a specific table, bill data, and where do we want that to show up? Well, in this case, I may want to show it up in our pivot tables, so I'm going to select our pivot tables, and we can have it show right up here and click OK if we wanted to show it there, and that's going to show us, and then we're going to be able to build it out. And so that's just what I did here. So we can clear that out. We don't need any of that. And so how do we do that? So we've got several that we've created here. Let's take a look inside here. As you noticed in one of our first ones inside our dashboard, we have the payables by vendor and we have total payables by month, right? So that's really important. So let's take a look in the pivot table. Good. This particular pivot tables, I want to show by here. I want to show the summary of the amount due. This particular pivot, the sum of the amount due based on a specific given month. So basically our rows are going to be month and sorted by due dates, right? I want to know what's due by any given month, right? So take a look. Here's our payables due by month. It is this chart. So I then created a chart. If we click on here, we're going to see the same thing, right? Exactly the same thing. So this particular bar chart is going to be based on the months, right? I want to know the months. I want total by months and the sum of the amount due. We're focused. If we wanted to know how many we paid, we could simply change this to the paid, right? So if we want to know only paid amount, we could change this to paid amount, or we wanted to show both, we could, but we don't need to do that. We'll just show the amount due. We don't necessarily need to do it, and we can remove that field. Great, so we're going to focus on the amount due. So I've given it just a little bit of a slicer here. And of course, if you don't want to see these things, we just added them. All you need to do is just hide all the access button. And also you can do is we want to hide the plus and minus. All right, just click in here, and then all we need to do is analyze, and then we could just fill buttons, and then we'll just hide all. We don't need those buttons. So due by month, right? So I want to know how many due. So all we need to do is simply add in the months and due date, and it's going to automatically. And then all we need to do is just add a timeline, right? If I have a pivot chart here and I decide I want to add a timeline, right? Or a timeline, just click insert, and then it's going to be based, of course, we're basing it on due date. So we would click due date and click OK. And so we've got the 10, and then I've given it a specific format, just as with this format here, and that's going to give us our format. So that's the timeline I'm using. That's all we have. And then, of course, we don't want that data, so all I want to do is click on here, and I'm just going to unhide the header, selection label, the scroll bar, and that's how we can get this really cool timeline. That's how I got the 2022. Bringing this over here, and we see we've got a timeline, okay? That's going to get us that timeline, 2020, so that when we have multiple years of data, we can simply select those years, okay? We don't need that. Okay, very good. So let's take a look at the next pivot table. So that covers them. What about the total due? Remember, we've got inside the dashboard, right? I've got total current, total overdue. So I've created a little bit of a donut chart based on that data. So taking a look back inside the pivot tables, I want to know the total current. How many are current? Well, the best way to get that is we're going to use SUMIF. And remember, we have a named range due date. We're using SUMIF. And I want to know basically the due date is greater than or equal to today, right? If the due date is after or equal to today, we know it is a current balance. So then I want to sum all the amount due based on the current. But what if it's overdue? How do I know? Well, of course, the bill due would be less than today, right? Bill due, if the bill due was yesterday, which is less than today, and it's still unpaid, I want to know the total amount due based on any bill that's less than day, based on the due date. So that's going to get us the total. And then, of course, we have the total due, which is simply the total current plus the total overdue. And then I want to know the overdue percentage, right? It's simply going to be E4 divided by E5, which is simply the total overdue based on the total. So of the total due, what percentage is, of course, overdue? I want to know that percentage. That's going to get us that. So then all we did is just create a little bit of a donut chart based on that information right here. So we've got total current, total due. And then I want to just create a link. This text box here is linked to pivot tables E6. So that's all we have to do, pivot tables. And that E6 is located right here. That's going to get us that 15%. So I know what has been overdue. Great, great. So let's take a look inside. Let's moving from left to right. Now what I want to do is I want to know all of the vendors by amount due. So the amount due, right? And then sorted by amount. So we have all of our row labels, and I want to know the top 10, right? So if I want to know, or at least the top, right? So here we go. Here we go inside the dashboard. I want to know payables by vendor, and I want to know which vendors I owe the most money to. And I want to base it on all the statuses, right? So maybe we only want to know unpaid, right? I only want to know those vendors that are not paid based on a specific vendor. So I can click that slicer and notice only those vendors, who's the top vendors in which it is unpaid. So we created this little pivot chart inside here. So if we take a look in here, we see that we're going to values is going to be the sum of the amount due. I want to know the amount due. And I want to know what the vendor, and I want to know the status. So we've got the rows as vendors and the status, right? The status is going to be based on that slicer, right? So we get the slicer. And then we have the due date. So it's based on the due date, right? I want to know that. And that's all we have. Actually, we're not using due date too much. Considering on that's going to give us our date if we want to know. And the total amount due, we're simply summing the total amount dues based on a specific vendor. Then all we did was create a little bar chart for that and placed it directly inside here. And it could basically, so we might want to know all the statuses. So that's all we have to do. Holding down the control, we can select multiple ones. And that's going to get us our payables by vendor. Very, very simply. Okay, moving on. Next up, inside our pivot tables, we have another one here. These are called row labels, right? I want to know all of the bills based on the sum of the bill status. If we take a look back in the dashboard here, we see we've got bills by status period, right? I want to know the totals of bills based on a given period, based on whatever period we know. And that's going to help. So we've got another timeline here based on bills, based on their status here. So back into the pivot tables, we created a little bit of a pivot table. I'm summing the bill amount. This time I want to focus on the amount of the bill based on the status, And we're going to get this total here. So we have the total. Then all I did was create a little bit of a pie chart based on that, putting the values here, and then another timeline. Great. Now, lastly, our last one is the next 10 payments due. I want to know what are the next 10 payments due. Now, this one requires a macro, right? So if I want to know the next, it's going to be based, I'm going to run an advanced filter. And I want to know only those bills that have amounts due, and I want to know those bills based on the earliest date, right? There's still a balance and it's an early date. So that's going to be with an advanced filter. So if we go into the database here, then we're going to run basically another advanced filter based on the original data. And I want to make sure that the amount due does not equal empty. So everything with the amount due, then I want to sort it based on the earliest date. And then what I want to do is I want to take the top 10 here and I want to place them directly in here. I want to add some conditional formatting based on alternating rows. Then I'm going to create a picture tool. A picture tool, what do I mean by a picture tool? A picture tool is this little tool right here. I'm going to create a picture tool. I'm just going to put it here, right? And then what I'm going to do is going to base it on just that information. I'm going to use the header row, and I'm going to go all the way down to here. That's going to, and hit enter. That's going to create a picture tool. It is this here, this shape that we're using inside our dashboard. Okay, so using that picture tool. So all we need is a simple macro to run that. So if we take a look back inside our application, at the bottom of our application here, we have a dashboard refresh next 10. This is the macro that will automatically run every time we activate our dashboard. So if we click on our dashboard, we scroll down, activate. There's actually two. We're going to refresh all the workbooks. This will refresh all the pivot tables. And we're going to run the macro that we're going to go over now, which is to refresh the next 10. It's a very simple macro. All we need to do is clear any existing data inside the bills database, determine the last row, run an advanced filter based on this criteria, AQ, amount due value, getting those results from AS through AU, and then also sorting them based on the earliest date, making sure that we have data. If it's less than 4, then we can exit the sub out. we're going to sort the data, right? We're going to sort it based on AT3, based on that first due date. And we want it ascending, the earliest first. Then we're going to sort it, and we're going to determine, set the range from AS3 all the way to AU, and then apply that sort. Once it's applied, the camera tool we've already created, it will automatically update. This camera, this picture here, will automatically update because it's based on live data, and we just place it here. That's it. That's how we get this really incredible dashboard. Wow, what an amazing training. In this training, we learned how to create this really cool hover menu with automatic click, so we can click to any screen we want to. We also showed you how to create the bills and payments, where we had dynamic filtering, dynamic headers. We could clear it, and we could also show or hide specific bills based on their status. We also showed you how to add new bills, add pictures, add previews of the pictures of those bills, save and update the vendor, or even add new vendors. And this really incredible scheduler where we have dynamic colors, dynamic icons, and we have the dynamic dates based on bill date, due date, or pay date. And then lastly, we finished off with this really cool dashboard where we were able to show all of our data in different formats in a really cool dashboard. Thank you very much. If you do like these trainings, so many great ways to support us. I've got 200 of my best templates available in a zip file, and now we have those PDF codebooks, and that means you can study the PDF with PDF code, which is all the code inside our $77, or sometimes we have promotions, but it's a great deal. That's 200 of my best templates. I'll include the links down below. Go ahead and pick it up. Of course, don't forget to comment below, click subscribe, smash that like button, and we'll see you next week for another incredible training. Thank you so much.